know it's a little bit awkward. You're used to asking the questions as opposed to being on the hot seat yourself. So I do appreciate you getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, it's been quite the ride. I usually, try to, as a reporter does, try to stay behind the scenes, not very in front of the camera, never talk about myself. But in this occasion, I felt that I had to open up to the community that I serve and tell them my journey.
Well, let's talk about the community that you're serving. You're working with Telemundo, so obviously the Hispanic population here. And one of the things that we've been doing with or at the physician committee is really trying to reach that community, because what we have found is that it is completely underserved in terms of proper nutrition and teaching them the fundamentals of a healthy diet. And I know that you just released this incredible documentary. I'm going to try to say it properly. Comida como cura, which means what?
Food as medicine.
There it is. There it is. The greatest title in the history of titles. First of all, why this project?
I started this project because I felt there was a need in the Hispanic community to have this information, like you say. But it didn't just come to me. I became very ill in 2015, and by 2017, I finally was diagnosed with Sjogren's, an autoimmune disorder. And when I went to my doctors, and they put me on immunosuppressors and steroids, and things happened. I got bigger, which people saw on camera because I'm a TV personality. So they're like, "Oh, but see, he's getting big." They didn't know why. I lost my hair, started all the side effects that drugs have, and I would ask my doctors if there was a way naturally, or if I could change my food, if it would help, and my doctors would simply say no. I started looking because I was desperate, and I found all these documentaries in English, including Code Blue from Dr. Stanstey, and all the ones that you've seen, but there was nothing in Spanish. So the first thing I did was I tried this out. I healed myself. I took some courses in nutrition, and it worked, and I got better. And then I said, well, now I got to take care of my community and get this information out to them. And that's when the documentary came about. I said, how come there is no documentary in Spanish talking about this? And the people I serve deserve to know this if they're going through what I'm going through.
How's it been received so far? Because I know from experience that the idea of eating an entirely plant-based diet is really kind of jarring to a lot of people.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think that, I came from an area where, I didn't, although the Hispanic community is very kind and loving, and they love the animals and they love the planet. I didn't go about telling them to eat fruits and vegetables because it was going to save the planet. I talked about my story, and my story is a story of many Hispanics. It's a story of somebody who's sick and has tried all the medicine and is still sick, and then needs more medicine for the side effects of that medicine, and they related to that. And that's why it's been so successful. This documentary has been shared across the country on our network shows. It's been really big because people were hungry for this. Growing up in South America, I can tell you, we heard of this. I mean, our grandma told us about these nature retreats and all that, and you would go and heal yourself. But we tend to forget things. When we come to this country, we see an abundance of food, mainly processed food. We start eating that, we start getting sick, and we forget that the health is in our food. So one, it was reminding people that that exists, and two, showing them it works. It worked on me, and it's worked on so many other people. So it's giving them hope, and it's been amazing how many people have written in, I have a disease, I'm going to give it a shot, I'm going to talk to my doctor, I'm going to find a doctor who knows about nutrition, which is what I end up doing, and I suggest people do the same.
I love those types of emails when I get them here on the exam room. Like, it means the world to me to know that the stories that we tell, the information that we're sharing is connecting on such a profound level. Do you remember the first time you got an email or a message from a viewer who said, thank you so very much for this?
As soon as we put this documentary out, I was scared. I'm not going to lie to you, because I've been a very private person. I'm an investigative reporter, so my stories usually are targeting somebody who did something bad, and so I've been very private about my life. So I was very afraid. This was probably the story or the project that made me most afraid, because I was opening myself up. And I would tell my family, I'm a little nervous about this. And as soon as it came out, the emails started coming in. I have Sjogren's, I have, diabetes, I have heart disease, and I'm going to give it a shot. And my doctors tell me that, there's nothing I can do. And then there's people who told me, I've tried this and it's working. Thank you so much. And asking for recipes. That's the next thing everybody asks for.
No doubt about it. Being the investigative reporter that you are, though, I'm sure there was some skepticism there. Like, show me the proof before you actually, I guess even try this for yourself. So when you really started to do this digging, like how much research did you do before you felt comfortable giving it a whirl yourself?
A lot. I read every book available. I mean, I started with the China study and Whole and Dr. Stanz's book and, Dr. Anna Nagidon's book, and I read a lot. And then I took the nutrition, the T. Colin Campbell's Nutrition Center's nutrition study, plant-based nutrition certificate. And I learned even more. And then I felt comfortable, knowing the studies, knowing the science. But before I did all that, I got to tell you, I did what a lot of people do. I was so desperate. I'm like, you know what? It's not like I'm going to do anything difficult. They're not telling you to take a pill. Let me give it a shot. I tried it on myself. It worked. And then I studied to see why it worked. And I found all this information. So yeah, I really did take a deep dive into this nutrition because I wanted to know why it worked. And if I could actually tell people that it worked because of the science.
Compare how it actually worked to what your original expectations were. I'm guessing, seeing as though you're just kind of beaming today and made a documentary, it exceeded anything beyond your wildest imagination.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was I was in a low place of my life. I mean, I'm a very active person, and I do a lot of volunteer work outside of work. My job is very demanding. I'm one of those, Hispanic Latina moms who has to cook every day for her kids and her husband, and I'm very active. And I found myself laying on the sofa, not being able to go outside. I loved to garden. I couldn't go out. I'd look out like a fishbowl. I couldn't go outside because I was so sick. I was in a lot of pain. So my life really took a big turn. I mean, I got my life back. And that's why, I hope that for other people. And I figured, it's not an easy transition. I'm not going to tell anybody it's an easy transition. But it's easier than what was going to happen to me in the long run. I know that for sure. I've been in enough hospitals to know that's not how I want to end my life.
Let's talk about your transition. So as you were leading up to, you got your diagnosis, what was your diet like heading up to everything before it kind of culminated and you made that turn?
I love to cook. I think that's one of the reasons I've been successful in this. I love to cook. I love to try new recipes. But I was making a lot of meat recipes. I'm from Chile, so we do barbecues every weekend. Now my brother who barbecues puts all the veggies for me. And everybody's eating more veggies than my siblings are. It's amazing. But we would barbecue every weekend. I would make these, pasta, like homemade, from scratch pasta. And yeah, it was very rich in processed foods or in meat. It was very rich in meat. I transitioned to another rheumatologist. The first doctor who told me that, nutrition had nothing to do with it. After I realized that it did, I changed to another rheumatologist who actually looked at the studies and would send me Mediterranean diets. This might be better. Realized there was a link between my disease and what I was eating and all these other exterior factors. So for me, immediately I started feeling better and I got my life back. I couldn't walk. Now I was walking everywhere. I started running. If you see the documentary, I run a half marathon, which I never thought I was going to be able to do again. So just changing my diet gave me my life back. And then I was able to do other things, lifestyle medicine, just like sleeping better, because I wasn't waking up with pain, meditating, exercising, all the wonderful things. I was able to enjoy it again because I was able to be mobile.
Phenomenal results, but when you first started talking to your family about what it was you were going to do, I mean, did they kind of give you like the people's eyebrow looking like The Rock with that eyebrow? Like,
well, my husband's Cuban American, so he was brought up with lechon or pork, So, but he is the most supportive husband. I'm not selling him, so I'm not going to promote him, but he's amazing. And he saw me so sick, he's like, try anything. My kids, when I started cooking this food, they were like, we're not going to be vegan. We're not going to be vegan. Is that vegan? I don't want vegan. Like every kid does. And now, they're not 100% plant-based, but they do eat a lot more vegetables and they don't eat any red meat anymore. So they've tapered off a lot of the animal protein and a lot of, I've also, because I've introduced so many veggies at home, they've tried and liked new veggies and like new fruits. So, at the beginning, there was a little bit of resistance as to not me doing it, but everybody having to do it because I'm the chef of the house. But they were always supportive of me because, they saw how sick I was and, they were going to support whatever I did to try to get better.
So your battle was with Sjogren's, but let's talk about the rates of chronic disease among the Hispanic community, which are far higher than many other communities here in the States. When it comes to combating chronic disease, we're talking diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, all of that. How are the rates currently with the Hispanic community?
Diabetes is pretty high. It is, and obesity rates are really high in the Hispanic community. And I'll tell you, one of my producers who takes our calls, and we get hundreds of calls a week because I'm an investigative reporter. People asking for help. She would listen to her. She's got the biggest heart in the world, and she was losing her eyesight because her diabetes was so out of control. And, before I even thought of doing this, I started sending her, Fork Over Knives, What the Health, all these documentaries. I'm like, just watch this stuff. Just watch it and see what you think. And she changed that, and, she got progressively better. She's in Texas, so she would travel to Mexico to get blood work, every other week, and she saw her numbers coming down. So Hispanics really need this information because, like the rest of the community, heart disease is big, diabetes is big. I mean, we have people losing limbs who are getting dialysis who could actually prevent this. And I think the biggest thing that I learned during this process, and that I repeat to whoever has these issues, is the role fat has in our diet. How animal fat can actually increase your risk of diabetes, type 2 diabetes. My father, type 2 diabetic, and has had a triple bypass. He actually, I call him a scammer because he's actually in the documentary because he's healed himself with this kind of nutrition, but he uses it as medicine. He gets better and then he goes back to eating all his stuff. But my father, when he eats what I serve him, he doesn't have to inject himself. So it's pretty amazing, and it's so instant for us to see a difference, and that as soon as they start trying it, they immediately get it. It may be difficult, but they know it's there, and and just like my father knows this medicine is there for him, and it's absolutely free, and that's what I like the most. Nobody's selling anything here. I think Dr. Greger says, when was the last time Big Broccoli took your doctor out for dinner? I think that's his saying. I love Dr. Greger. He's right on with that. Honestly, there's no miracle pill. It's just eat more, what your grandma told you, eat more fruits and veggies, and less of the other stuff. And eat more real food. We eat so much processed food in this country. I have a family member now who was very sick and got tested, and her pesticide levels are out of this world high. And she's a healthy eater. And it's honestly, if we don't watch what we're eating in this country, our disease is not just for Hispanics, but in general. Are going to keep increasing. Another thing that happens with Hispanics is we come from countries where legumes are big. I mean, we ate lentejas, lentils, in Chile all the time. But we come here and meat is so much cheaper and so affordable for us that we think, okay, well now we can eat this all the time because we can afford it and it's abundant. And that's, as soon as we get to this country, we start adapting, we start getting all of these diseases. And I think people remember eating better in our countries. They remember that. So I think that's why they made a connection with us.
You are far from the first person to tell me that once you immigrate to the United States, your health starts to fall apart after you begin to eat that standard American diet. That's why they call it the SAD diet, Speaking with people who have immigrated from Asia and India, Africa, the UK, everybody who comes here winds up, losing their health, So it's really kind of sad to me that more isn't made about that connection up front. And I love what you were saying about, Grandma knew best way back when, more fruits, more vegetables. In this country, though, I wish that there was more coaching about what truly is a healthy fruit or vegetable. My grandma, for instance, she considered a can of baked beans, whether or not there was pork in that, to be a vegetable. You know, so potato chips, vegetable, baked beans, a vegetable, and then you pair that with hot dogs and macaroni and cheese, and there you have a well-balanced dinner. And that's how I got up to 420 pounds and was on blood pressure medication in high school. So, you know, it's just insane to me, you know, that more isn't taught about this. So I'm glad that you were able just kind of to revert back to your roots a little bit to make this process, this change a little bit easier for you, even though you said that it wasn't necessarily the easiest thing in the world for you.
Yeah, I mean, knowing that that's how we used to eat, you know, it's always in the back of your head, you know, those memories. I have this thing where I have, you know, this little gadget where I chop my cilantro, my parsley, and that was my job when I was a kid. I was the, you know, I was the one who would chop the herbs, and I smell that, and it reminds me of my mom's kitchen when I was a kid. So you know, it's in there. We've all, you know, we all remember, especially, you know, if we immigrated, you know, a little later, we all remember, you know, eating this kind of food, this healthy food when we were kids, and just bringing it back. What happens, what makes it difficult to transition is we get set in our ways of, you know, cooking the same things over again. I mean, I could throw a piece of chicken on, you know, on the skillet and have some, you know, white rice done in 20 minutes. And that was easy, and my kids were fed in no time. And so this requires a little bit more chopping, or a little bit more prepping, a little bit more organization. But I'd rather put the time in now. It's like a bank account. You're putting the time in now, chopping vegetables and doing all this. And then, you know, you're gonna retire with those benefits. You're gonna cash it in just like your 401. You know, you're gonna be able to retire with health. And that's what I'm doing. I'm doing like a savings account now. Yes, I spend a little bit more time chopping vegetables and prepping some meals, but I know that I'm gonna be able to be mobile when I'm old and continue to do the things I like to do.
All right, and here's the big question I'm sure everybody's wondering is, what foods are you depositing into that account that you were just talking about? What are your favorites?
You know, it's funny, at 40-something years old, I don't remember what time, I think it was like 46 years old, I discovered kale. Kale was new for me. I was like, what is that? Now I even grow it in my yard. So kale is brand new. That just came out last year, like I say. I love, I do like my beans. I love lentils. I can have lentils any which way. I have a whole bunch of recipes for lentils. You can't mess up lentils. Black beans, rice, brown rice, for like big staples. So that's for my big salads. Black beans, brown rice, and maduro for, you know, right, plantains in the air fryer. I could eat that every day. So that's one of my go-to meals.
You should try that
I like a lot of Asian food. I learned, I discovered bok choy at 40-something years old too. There was a lot of vegetables out there I didn't know. And it's funny because, you know, this is embarrassing, but I would eat Chinese food and bok choy was in there, but I didn't know what that was. So I love bok choy, I love kale. I've always liked salads, but now I put like yummy stuff. I mean, I discovered chia seeds. I discovered, you know, pepitas. I rediscovered pepitas, the little Seminole, you know, the little pumpkins, to put in my salad. I learned to eat eggplants. I learned to eat zucchini. I didn't like those growing up, but your taste buds change. And after you start, you know, eating cleaner, you start liking things. I never liked yuca before, and now I like yuca. So it's amazing. There's just so many vegetables. I was like, you know, Dr. I don't know, you know, I was talking about, you know, making the switch from animal protein to the other stuff. And it's like, you know, you have chicken, fish, you know, pork, you know, meat. And then in the plant the plant world, you have so many, you could sit here all day and, you know, and fire them off. You know, broccoli. I love broccoli. I've always liked broccoli. But now I put more of it in our diet. My kids love it. I can't even pull it out of the oven fast enough, and they eat it like a snack.
Well, okay, so two things. One, the fact that your kids eat broccoli, that is just amazing, and I think the entire world has just stood up and paid attention to what it is that you just said. Two, holy God, you get the quote of the year. I know it's only March, but you get the quote of the year. Kale just came out last year. Oh my God, I love you so much. Please don't ever leave. Like, this is just phenomenal. Oh my goodness. But I do have one final question for you, and it is kind of a serious one. And it goes to the heart of what it is that we do here on the exam room, and certainly to the heart of what it is you hope to accomplish with this documentary. And that is, what would your message be to someone who is feeling like their health challenges are hopeless? No matter what it is that they do in life, they are destined to lose their vision because of diabetes, or perhaps a limb. They're destined to die of a heart attack because that's what happened to their father, their grandfather, their grandmother, whatever the case may be. You are living proof that it doesn't have to be that way. So what would your message then, Miriam, be to that person?
I think genes are just one example of what could happen to you. I know I am genetically predisposed to certain diseases that my parents and my grandparents have, but I've been able to revert a lot of my disease and a lot of my risk factors by changing this. So what we inherited was, yes, our genes, but also our way of life. And if you can change the way of life, you inherited that dish full of fat. You inherited, la carne, the meat. And you can change that, and it'll change your path. So my word to you would be, give it a shot. I mean, it's free. I mean, all you have to do is just, instead of buying one thing at the supermarket or at the farmer's market, buy something else and give it a shot. Give yourself a shot. Give yourself a chance to get better, and you're going to see how you can feel a lot better.
See, he says, take that. Those are words of wisdom, my friend. Miriam, thank you so very much. We've put a link to the documentary in the show description or in the episode notes, so please definitely go ahead and give that a view and share with your friends, your family. Let's continue to make the world a healthier place. Thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Such a cool story and great documentary. And I remember Dr. Sarai Stansic. She emailed me and she was so excited. She said, I have the perfect guest for you for the exam room. And man, was she ever right. I mean, Miriam is quite extraordinary. And she tells me that the documentary continues to be very well received in her community. And that made me think of our friend Mark Ramirez. He's been on the show a few times. Former University of Michigan football player, a big-time football school, and how Mark shared his own story of overcoming diabetes and how he now, too, is helping the Hispanic community. So he's teamed up with his wife, and they formed this company called Chickpea and Bean, and what they do is they go out and they teach the fundamentals of healthy plant-based nutrition. And what makes his story so remarkable is not just his own transformation, it's that he comes from a family that was ravaged by diabetes, and yet, despite all of the destruction, he was able to flip the script on his own health and become living proof that it can be done no matter what you think the odds are. So speaking of Mark, why not revisit his story right now with an exam room flashback? Mark, thank you so very much for taking the time, my friend.
Hey, you are very welcome. Honored to be here, Chuck. Thanks for inviting me.
What an incredible story you have. I mean, really, talk about just the incredible toll that diabetes has taken on your family.
Yeah, so I come from a big Mexican family, 8 brothers and sisters, and everybody, Chuck, with the exception of one sister, ends up battling diabetes. Everyone in my family, including my mother. Now, my mother, after 33 years of fighting diabetes and going blind, a heart attack, and a kidney transplant, ends up passing at the young age of 61 after a double bypass in Rush Presbyterian Hospital in Chicago. But that's my mother, dies at the young age of 61. Now, I'm 52, so that's 9 years away. And her life was cut short after this dramatic and disease, diabetes, traumatic disease, basically for over 33 years. Now, brothers and sisters, everybody, like I said, with the exception of one sister, has battled diabetes. We've had, multiple heart attacks, transplants, 3 kidneys and 1 pancreas transplanted in my family. 2 of my family members have gone blind. Over 20 years of dialysis. We look at the multitude of medications, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. So chronic illness has devastated my entire family. And I was headed down the same path. In 2002, the same year that my mother passed and the same year that my oldest brother died after a 9-month bout with pancreatic cancer, I'm diagnosed with diabetes. And I was not shocked. I was not surprised because ever since I was growing up and ever since I had memories of my mother, she was popping pills for diabetes. And everything that I had read and learned to be, or believed to be true up until that point was that it's genetic. I'm Hispanic. Hispanics have high rates of diabetes. it's in your genes, there's not much you can do about this, so just brace for impact. Well, 12 years out of college, I graduated in 1990 out of the University of Michigan. 12 years later, my mother passes, my oldest brother passes, I'm diagnosed with diabetes, and I'm not shocked, I'm not surprised, because I've seen my entire family go down this path. So, you fast forward 10 years after once I was initially diagnosed with diabetes. I'm taking insulin shots multiple times a day. I'm on 2 oral meds for diabetes. I'm on a high cholesterol medication, a high blood pressure medication, and on top of all that, I'm obese. I have erectile dysfunction. I have psoriasis all over my scalp, heartburn very, very frequently. I don't sleep well, and I'm 43 years old, and I just see myself headed down the same trajectory as other family members of mine. And I have 2 children now. I'm really sad because I'm sitting here wondering, am I going to be able to see and watch my children walk down the aisle as they graduate high school or get their degrees from college or get married, right? So all of this mental stress that that was on us as well, my wife and I, we're sitting here wondering what our future is going to look like. And then lo and behold, we end up almost 9 years ago, we came across, you mentioned the documentaries and Netflix and all this channel for vegans. We came across Forks Over Knives, and so we watched that documentary, and through there I was introduced to Dr. Barnard. So we bought Dr. Barnard's program for reversing diabetes, his book. We read that book, saw the documentary, and we started a plant-based lifestyle on December 3rd of 2011. So almost, it's 8.5, going on 9 years now. And we never looked back. I mean, I had tried, Chuck, in that decade of being sick, slowly just progressively getting worse, to count carbs, count calories, portion control, exercise more, eat less, all these different tactics that you hear about today. And I might have lost a little weight or felt a little better, but at the end of the day, it wasn't until I fixed the food, and we fixed it with a whole food, plant-based lifestyle, just like P. Sarah and Dr. Barnard talk about, and you talk about all the time. And it's amazing that in a matter of months, so I was taking 5 different medications, the insulin shots and 4 oral pills. And once we adopt the whole food plant-based lifestyle, low in fat, we ended up in 2 months, after being sick for a decade, for 10 years. In 2 months, I'm off all the medications. In 3 months, I shed 50 pounds. And I got to 210 pounds, like you mentioned. I haven't weighed 210 pounds since the 7th grade. And so it's pretty amazing the trajectory that my family is now on. And now we see the future is bright. We don't have these dark clouds hanging over us where we're thinking about what's my health going to be like. Keep the insulin cold. Make sure my pills are refilled and with us when we go on vacation. All of this, and you mentioned earlier about the money. We project $18,000 to $20,000 in these 8.5 years of no medications, no doctor copays, no all these procedures that you go through. I go to the doctor once a year, and I love going to the doctor because when I go, my results pretty much end up being normal.
Oh man, what a change from all that, all the years previous. I remember being overweight and going to the doctor, and my medical file was like this thick, man. I mean, it was like an encyclopedia. I want to go back to your football days, because you said basically as long as you can remember, your mom was taking medication for diabetes. But as a football player, you have to be eating just enormous amounts of food, probably not the healthiest food out there. Did you ever make that connection that what it was that you were putting into your body at that point, did it even register that might be what, would lead to problems down the line? Or did you have this air of invincibility about you?
So at the time, right, it's entrenched and embedded in you, right, that for protein, you need meat. You need a lot of meat to get a lot of protein to get big and strong, right? And this is what, ever since I was, in 5th grade, started to play football all the way through college. It was you need meat, get a lot of protein in there, you can get big and strong. And yeah, I mean, I did. I got big and strong. However, I am 100% convinced, Chuck, that eating those foods for all those decades prior to me, being diagnosed with diabetes, that is absolutely what ended up leading me down that path to having all this chronic illness. And how I know is because when I changed the foods, when I stopped eating those foods, I got better. My health returned, and now we live vibrant lives. But as football, we want to be big and strong. I was an offensive lineman, 305 pounds, when I played at the University of Michigan. I'm 6'2", so I was a pretty big guy. And again, that's what's in trend. When I would go to training table at Michigan, I mean, I'd have 2 and 3 steaks, no problem, for dinner. I mean, there was a ton of meat, a ton of animal foods, and more importantly, like you mentioned about being big and strong, and around football is somewhat macho. Hey, I'm a macho man, and I'm big and strong in football, and I used to think that way. I bought into all that, but I am 100% convinced that the foods that I was eating, Chuck, would ultimately lead me to not be macho in the way of erectile dysfunction. I mean, I have a beautiful wife, and when you can't perform, I mean, how deflating is that, right? And I used to think, Chuck, I was like, well, it's too dark. It's too dark in here, it's too light in the room, the dog's in the room, it's too cold, it's too hot. I looked for every excuse on why I couldn't perform. And in reality, as we all know, I mean, the arteries, the artery that feeds our private is one of the smallest in the body. And so when we're eating these foods and we're clogging our arteries and our veins, all the cholesterol and saturated fat that builds up over time, that's going to be the first thing that a lot of men will notice is, hey, they start to have performance issues. And again, these very foods are the foods that made me unmanly. So now life is great. All of that went away. My diabetes, my ED, my psoriasis, my frequent heartburn, my obesity, my high blood pressure, my high cholesterol, it's all gone. All the medications are gone. And we're going on almost 9 years now, Chuck. So we're loving life, man.
What an incredible transformation. I got to ask you before we move on to the Fighting COVID-19 with Food series. How did your family react when you went plant-based and they started to see all of these changes in you? Did they, start to make some changes themselves?
So we have seen, I've seen some of my family members, they're making changes, making some moves. Some of them still need to move a little more than they have, but they are trying to make some moves. And it's one thing that I learned early on too, that you can't force anybody to do something they don't want to do, right? So they see me, I try to go to Chicago. I live in the Detroit area, but I try to get back to Chicago as often as I can. And, I try to just keep inspired.